Hi there, everyone. I am Rosana Jatobá, and I'm very happy to be with you enjoying the festival Inova Clubinho em Casa, with so many incredible and innovative ideas. And talking about innovative ideas, these are always in the radar of our next guest. He will be talking to us about the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Brazil, which is more and more in line with the true marketplace needs. He is the founding partner and VP of SB Venture, a venture capital fund specializing in AG techs. Welcome to Inova Clubinho Francisco Jardim. How are you, Chico? I know everyone calls you Chico. Welcome to our meeting.
How are you doing, Rosanna? Thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor to me. I'm a great admirer of the company, and I've been keeping tabs on the innovation work by Klabin for quite some time. It's an honor to be able to talk to you.
Chico, in the last few years, we have observed a phenomenon in the industry, which is innovation in agribusiness. What can you tell us about technological transformation and the impact for rural producers?
That's right, Rosanna. It's very hard to separate the history of the Brazilian agribusiness, especially in the last 50 to 60 years, when we really went to the Cerrado, to the Brazilian savanna, that we transformed this biome into the largest breadbasket, the largest food producer in the planet. It's very hard to dissociate the story from science and innovation. Most of the people don't have this information, but in 1976, Brazil was a net importer of food. And then we started with science in tropical agriculture. A lot of major research centers started working in an entrepreneurial way. Our entrepreneurs went from the south and southeast and started a new life, venturing out in business in the Midwest, and that's what really marked that rush towards yield. And it improved that territory that didn't produce food before. And from then on, what the agribusiness has been doing, with a little lag in terms of the innovation that comes to the urban centers due to lack of infrastructure like connectivity and things like that. But what the agribusiness has been doing is it has been adapting and incorporating our reality with the new technologies. And that's a very interesting point. If you look at other sectors, such as information technology, telecom, we can see that there's been some time where the axis has moved. It went from the major companies to the startup world, and we see this model in Silicon Valley, and we see it in Israel. And this is an innovation model with small groups that are very intensive, very tech savvy. They have a high appetite for risk. They don't have any habits from legacy companies. They can focus on different things. And finally, they have a very large budget coming from the venture capital funds. And with those characteristics, they turn into an innovation machine that really revolutionized industries. And in the agribusiness, this is definitely true. When you look at the new technologies that come to us, whether it's satellites, whether it's blockchain, drones, cloud computing, no innovation is coming via large companies. Large companies have lost the ability of getting there first, whether it's a drone company, whether it's an IoT company, or a big data company that processes satellite images in the field, whether it's a blockchain company, whatever it is, it's small companies. And to me, this is a major milestone. We have a new agribusiness now.
But do you think that with all this innovation, rural producers are being able to solve the dilemma of supplying more food? Given the large number of people to feed globally, we are almost 8 billion people, and this may go up to 9 or 10 billions in 2050, and at the same time deal with climate changes, mitigation of environmental impacts, and still be productive, which is currently the major goal.
Right, and Rosanna, is actually more serious than what you just said. Yes, we have populational growth. Yes, we have to produce more food in a very risky environment when you consider that the climate is one of the most serious variables, and it's the only certainty that we have is that we are going to intensify the changes and the adverse climate effects. And there is a third factor. With the emerging countries becoming wealthier, that is, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and etc., what you have is you have a consumption of protein per capita that is much bigger. When people move away from the poverty line, they start consuming more protein. They move towards animal protein, and that produces a huge pressure in the food production in the planet. So the demand for food in the next 30 to 40 years, just to give you an idea, in our vision, we are going to produce more food in the next 40 years than we have produced in the last 8,000 years. Of course, it's a larger population that consumes more. So it's a very serious challenge to where we run the risk, if we are not able to innovate in technology, we run the risk of increasing food production faster than the demand grows, whether it's populational growth or the wealth and change in habits. What we are going to have is problems that we have to feed the planet, and there might be conflicts and other things. Like Dr. Roberto Rodriguez says, the Brazilian grower is one of the biggest promoters of world peace, and that has to do with the innovations that are created here for tropical agriculture that increases yield, and that has to do with what you said. And new technologies, they are enabling growers to be able to manage their operations in a much more efficient way. So what does that mean? Growers are able to have a predictive analysis on diseases, on weeds, on caterpillars, and consequently they are able to do a preventive application with a lot of precision with computing. That's a great example. That means they are going to use less chemicals and they are going to be able to control better. So it's a reduction in cost and higher yield. That's one. Number two, it's a revolution in fertility as well. We are seeing tools, digital tools for soil analysis and margins that make possible to disseminate what we call precision agriculture for fertility, which is a variable rate when you apply fertilizers. And this is yet another huge leap in yield. So less fertilizers, more homogeneous soil, and more production, less cost, and more revenue. These are two examples, but I think there are so many others, so many things that are happening, and growers are able to produce more and spend less. And obviously, it has to do with the UN's CRA, or Climate Resilient Agriculture. These are growers that are resilient to climate change, and they are very tech-savvy.
You brought up a very interesting point, which is the possibility that rural producers now have of knowing exactly what's going on their properties. Recently, I interviewed the CEO of a startup who has developed a portable sensor that can give the detailed readings of the microclimate and the soil of a given region, including 19 variables, so temperature, rainfall, salinity, and they can then know how much fertilizer to use, how much irrigation is needed, because we know that water has a huge environmental impact in agriculture, the industry that uses water the most. So if you have such a device that is able to provide detailed data, of course, this will help to minimize waste and optimize crop yield.
Absolutely. And when this technology becomes available, when this technology becomes cheaper and more user-friendly, and when growers have more access to the long-term financing so they can invest in CAPEX, so they can invest in assets, the adoption is going to increase. And that follows a trend that we have been seeing in the field, which is labor on the field hasn't been growing, it's stagnated, it's been dropping in some places, but the income is going to rise. And this is clearly an agribusiness that is more tech-savvy, that has more added value, and that is definitely in line with the technologies. It's precisely what we are seeing in the field. And there are some competitions that are beautiful between techs. So the example that you mentioned, Rosanna, we have a line of entrepreneurs that are working with sensors, taking them to the fields. So soil analysis, climate analysis, they are harvesting data in real time. They are sending that to the farm office. This data is processed and it's transformed into what we call actionable insights. That helps with the decision making on the spot. So you start having a farm that makes decisions on real time with a high level of data processing, and on the other hand, we also have the technology technology entrepreneurs that are betting on remote imaging, that is, drones and satellites, to where you don't have the same precision on the data, at least not for now, but we are definitely having a lot of advancement in the quality and resolution of images. On the other hand, you have much more scale, so you have less precision, but you're able to cover a much larger field at a lower cost. So we have those two technology solutions, and they are competing to see which one is going to deliver better yield that is accessible for growers.
Chico, in the last few years, legacy has become a problem. So large rural producers are finding it hard to convince their own children to stay in the business. Do you think that with this whole innovation movement, these boys and these girls will be willing to go back home and take care of the business? It seems to me this is something interesting since it brings a lot of innovation, but also a matter of purpose, which I feel is vital when it comes to career choice.
Absolutely. In the United States, they have a saying, which is to be a farmer is the most important job on the planet. So they already have that vision. They know how important that work is. But what is happening now, and we are seeing this in Brazil, is that the agribusiness is not a low-value business. No, it's actually very intensive in technology, and it's an area that we are competing in on the world stage. And we are even more efficient than the others. The Europeans hide behind the common policy that is very robust, but in the United States, we have less subsidies, but more competition. And that happens because of technology and because of the local efficiency that we've been developing. So here's what I think that this efficiency is creating. It could create distancing, but it's actually creating proximity between three generations, grandfathers, fathers, and sons. So when we sell technology to our to the growers by digital marketing and by phone, we realize that one of the selling pitches that works really well is to be able to show how that technology is going to increase the farm's yield, is going to be some time left over because they're going to save time, they are going to be able to spend time with their family, and third, they are going to have a bond, they are going to have a line of communication and a connection with the new generation, so their children can go back to the farm, not only for conversation, but to have a proactivity, to show their children that, hey, it's worthwhile to go back to the farm and work in this business as a high-tech business. And this is a very challenging work, and there's also a lot of rewards with it. So technology and innovation is really bringing those generations together. A lot of people that didn't go to school for that used to think that the agribusiness was going to adopt major technology when the new generation took over. But that's one of the major fallacies going around. Today we are seeing grandfathers on WhatsApp, they are checking their sensors on the mobile phones, grandfathers are negotiating inputs via the mobile phone, which is a negotiation that is almost completely digital. So we are seeing all three generations being converged in this technology, and that is creating a bond. And that is another aspect too. I've been participating in some angel investment groups in the agribusiness, especially in the countryside. And I have seen a lot of plenaries, people discussing investments, and there were grandfathers, fathers, and sons discussing investment in companies like the one you mentioned with drone imaging or satellite imaging. They are discussing the business, the solution, the team, the size of the market. So in other words, it is a step beyond. We are talking about innovation and adapting technology to the farm, and we are putting the reserves and the savings of that farm into technology. So this is a huge movement. It's a very strong trend that is really changing the agribusiness.
No wonder they call it entrepreneurial ecosystem, because these are complementary relations. And Chico, I would like to ask you how this innovation, this technological transformation movement relates to public policies. We have recently seen the approval of a policy for payment for environmental services that will allow rural producers to be paid to conserve the forest, to maintain the forest. Innovation in this case, how does it relate to this law?
Yes, Rosanna. So that's what makes it so important for us to understand the peculiarities of the ecosystem when you invest in a transaction like this. And it's not only to look at what is happening outside and to think that this happens in an environment that is so different as Brazil in the same way. No, it's not the same. You have to understand the differences. So we have to understand some of the things that are happening in the agribusiness that were not happening 4 to 5 years ago, and today they are some of the major powerhouses in terms of trends and in terms of opportunities for investment on the field as well. So the first point that is really important, there is a generation of agri-techs that came from abroad, and their purpose was to set up a company to buy hectares from growers in exchange for technology. The problem is growers don't have money left over. They don't have money kicking around to acquire new technologies and be able to pay for that to build a large company in the agribusiness. So the agri-tech entrepreneur in Brazil, they have to look at the entire chain, and there are two major trends, but there are many, but there are two main ones that are going to be the major catalysts of value adding. And the first one is in the financial sector, right? So in the last few years, there's been a regulation change, a very strong regulation change in the agribusiness. We've seen this in provisional measures. We saw the new rules that were enacted last year. So there's been a lot of regulatory changes to facilitate credit and to increase credit. The credit competition is very much healthy in the agribusiness, and regulating agencies have been doing this for a while in Brazil. In the payment industry, you used to have Cielo and Rede just hogging the market with a monopoly. Now we have new regulations, new technologies, and there is a lot of competition. So we have PagSeguro and other companies that are making payment methods available at lower rates. And these were companies that seemed perennial 5 years ago, like Cielo. And it's one of those companies that everyone is waiting to see when they are going to be acquired or when they are going to wilt. And this is really present in the agribusiness. How does that happen? Regulatory innovation, low interest rates, lower costs, a lot of credit available in the field, and there is also an exit, which is not as gradual. It's a relatively strong exit of Banco do Brasil, BNDES, and BNB as the major credit providers. They are no longer the major credit powerhouses. So there is a lot of space, and we are seeing a lot of fintechs in the agribusiness. And I have no question that in the next 5 years, we're going to have some digital agribusiness-centric businesses. There's going to be farm insurance solutions. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to focus on the growers. So one of the major trends that we are seeing is this. We are seeing an explosion of the financial market and financial services that are very tech-savvy and focused on farmers. And that is going to create a lot of efficiency. And one other point that you all also touched is the carbon market. This is a market that 1.5 years ago, nobody thought it would be as strong as it was in early 2021. When the COVID crisis hit, I thought it was going to be just like 2018. We were talking about this market in 2018, and all of a sudden there was this crisis, and we felt it. But it came back, and it didn't suffer any shakeups last year. On the contrary, it gained power in the pandemic. So you have the agri-fintechs, and you have the companies that monetize via carbon credits and other opportunities. So that makes for a hundreds of billions of dollars market, and there is no better industry than the agribusiness.
Chico, we began this conversation talking about what happened in the 70s of the producers who were the pioneers in Brazil and who now have a whole new look. They are true environmentalists that work according to the ESG agenda with the best environmental, social and governance practices without losing sight of profit. Chico, I would like to thank you for this conversation, and I would like to ask you to leave to our participants and internet users your final message.
Well, my final message is that this is the most prosperous moment. This is the best moment to venture out in business in Brazil. Crises always create a fertile ground for this type of entrepreneurship. You have a lot of labor around. established companies and major companies, they are dizzy, they suffer with the major crises, and they try to reinvent and can't. Customers are looking for solutions that optimize cost, and they want access to capital. There's never been as much capital available to venture out in business in Brazil. So my end message is that what is going to change our country and our business is technology entrepreneurship. We got to pay attention to the revolutions. We got to learn about it. And we have to set up a company that is going to bring this technology masked as yield in the market. This is what is going to change the country. We were talking about purpose, and it's essential to produce more food and ensure food security with less inputs, less water, less chemicals, less fertilizers, less chemicals, less crop protection chemicals, and that also has to do with reducing the pressure in the expansion of the ag frontier and deforestation. So there is a huge impact, but it's also a fantastic economic opportunity. So my final message is be entrepreneurs. Venture out in business with your own company or be a part of a major business. Be a corporate entrepreneur, part of a major business, which is just as important as new entrepreneurs. So that's my message to you. Let's be entrepreneurs. And we're always here to support you and help the main ag businesses.
Chico Jardim, thank you very much for this conversation. Good luck, and I look forward to meeting you again.
Thank you, Rosana.
And for you who have been with us with Francisco, known as Chico Jardim, stay tuned because there's more for you in Festival Inova Cabim program.